Welcome back. We're joined by Dr. Arthur Brooks, one of the most eminent, articulate, and highly regarded conservatives in Washington, D.C. these days. He is currently the president of the American Enterprise Institute. Formerly served as a professor at Syracuse University and elsewhere. He also is, by sheer brilliant skill, a very accomplished French hornist, a Renaissance man, I think it's fair to say, and we're delighted to have him with us on the occasion of the publication of a new book that he has authored entitled The Conservative Heart: How to Build a Fairer, Happier, and More Prosperous America. Arthur Brooks, welcome to Secure Freedom Radio. It is terrific to have you with us, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you, Frank. What an honor for me to be with you today.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this idea. The proposition seems absolutely indisputable. We all want fairer, happier, more prosperous Americans. What is it about conservatism, in your judgment, that is a better bet than the alternative?
Well, the truth of the matter is it's indisputable that conservative ideas have pulled more people out of poverty and given more people lives of opportunity than any system in the history of mankind. It's clear, and this is something, of course, I didn't know until I studied, because I grew up in a liberal home in Seattle. I thought that conservatives don't have a heart. The main reason I wrote the book is to show that conservatives do and how they can express it. When I finally studied economics in my 20s, I was shocked to learn that the ideas of globalization and free trade and free enterprise and American national security, which had kept big parts of the world safe and free, had lifted 2 billion people out of poverty since I was a child. The problem was that conservatives never talked about it, never tried to get the idea across, and never tried to apply these ideas to Americans who were suffering. And so the result was that people have thought for many years, including me as a child, that conservatives don't care about the poor. That's holding the movement back.
Yeah, and we certainly have evidence of that, not just holding the movement back, but preventing its presidential candidate, or at least the Republican presidential candidate, from prevailing in the last national election cycle. Mitt Romney was considered by very many, apparently, not to care about them. We're joined, I'm very pleased to say, by Dr. Arthur Brooks, the president of the American Enterprise Institute, the author of a brand new and potentially very, very transformative book, The Conservative Heart: How to Build a Fairer, Happier, and More Prosperous America. And Arthur, having a conservative heart is something that we're generally accused of being sort of an oxymoron, that we don't, and we're endlessly competing against liberals who demonstrate they have a heart by any number of government programs that seem to be offering fairer and happier and more prosperous America and Americans. What's wrong with their argument, and how do you argue American conservatives can most effectively compete against this idea?
Well, Frank, this book contains effectively a debate manual, and my guarantee is that if people read it and pay attention to the arguments in it, they won't lose their next debate with a liberal who says that conservatives don't care about poor people. I've used these techniques working with presidential candidates and members of Congress when they're getting ready for debates and town hall meetings, and the first thing I say is remember what you truly do care about. Conservatives are very good at talking about money, about the idea of economic efficiency, but that's actually not what you and I care about the most. What outrages us about the American economy today are the people who are being left behind. I don't lay awake nights saying, boy, I wish the tax rates were lower for billionaires. I don't care. What I care about is the fact that people who are poor have a harder time getting ahead under the policies of the Obama administration, and that's got to change. When people see that that's what I'm angry about and that's what I want to change, they're going to see me differently.
And I gather that you find and are able to prescribe real programs or real arguments, at the very least, for demonstrating how conservatives can do that in a manner that does indeed trump the arguments of the left, especially given the track record. And it's not just, of course, Obama's, but as you know better than I, it goes back, I guess, really to the New Deal as much as anything. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. Americans who are struggling, Americans who are poor, look at conservatives through a sort of a jaundiced eye because of the long-standing idea that conservatives don't care about poor people. What we can do when we start talking about poverty, and when on our heart we really do have the poor and the vulnerable and people who have been left behind front and center, people will start to listen. There's a good deal of studies, and I go through this in the book. I show with, chapter and verse, real data, that when people just see you talking about the vulnerable, see you with a commitment, even if they don't agree with your policy ideas, see you with a commitment to the least of these in our society, they will start to listen, and people will start to swing. Independent voters, if they think a Republican and a Democrat are equally compassionate toward the poor, no matter what their policies are, that fact will swing independent voters 10 percentage points to the Republican, no questions asked. I mean, if we did that, game over.
You and I have talked in the past on occasion, Arthur Brooks, about one other facet, of course, of American conservatism, at least as practiced by iconic figures like Ronald Reagan, namely national security. And that's a piece that this show primarily focuses on, as you know. How does that fit into your vision? It is essential, it seems to me, to have an opportunity to pursue happiness, that you be secure. But is that in your playbook as well? And how do you see the folks that are trying to demonstrate this compassion giving people what may oftentimes be the hard truth that security has to be attended to as well?
Well, there are two ways that this is very important, and to me, this is absolutely important. I'm a full spectrum conservative, and that means that American dominance in world affairs is critically important. It's critically important to the peace and prosperity of the whole world. If you look at a country that's still a mess when it comes to authoritarianism, China has made just a couple little changes in the system such that since 1980, 680 million Chinese have been pulled out of poverty. Predominant among them is a move toward free trade. That free trade has been facilitated not just by Chinese leaders who said it's okay. It's primarily been facilitated by a Pacific Ocean that for the first time in history that we know of has been free for people to trade across it to the United States with the West. The American military have helped to pull almost 700 million people out of poverty in what's arguably our greatest adversary today. That's what America can do for the world. That's number one. Number two, people deserve the dignity that comes from opportunity. And we know that opportunity on a mass scale only comes from democratic capitalism. When we don't stand up assertively for our views around the world, when we don't remember that democratic capitalist countries automatically are our allies, and we're going to push other countries toward the system that's made America great and free, other people are going to suffer. That's important.
Just to follow that logic, you're surely right that the openness of trading, particularly with the United States, has enabled this transformation in China. And yet, as you said at the end of that riff, the Chinese are arguably now our greatest adversary. We're confronting people who have not brought democratic capitalism along with free trade. They have, in fact, exploited it, it seems, to build a capability that may well threaten all of us. Again, I think underscoring the argument that we do need to attend to security as well as these other concerns.
Absolutely, and we always have to remember that attending to the dignity of people around the world at the same time trying to keep Americans secure, it's all part of the seamless garment of what American conservatives and liberals, people with a really big heart for how we're trying to help Americans and everybody, how it all hangs together. This is the reason, Frank, I talk about this in the conservative heart, that if you really are a conservative and you do have a big heart for everybody, it really means you need to have a full spectrum understanding of conservative philosophy. These conservatives today who say, I believe in free enterprise, but they're very dovish on American foreign policy. They're not complete in their views of actually how human welfare is going to be best served.
Right, and unlikely to succeed in doing that. Arthur Brooks, we're delighted that you are a full-spectrum conservative and that your American Enterprise Institute promotes those pieces of the stool as well. Thank you for this conversation, and again, congratulations on The Conservative Heart, How to Build a Fairer, Happier, and More Prosperous America. I hope you'll come back to us again very soon. Next up, we'll talk to Bill Gertz, straight ahead.